Hi, good morning everyone. So I'm here from Visit Britain to talk to you today around how we are trying to make sure that Britain remains a leading business hub, but particularly in how that ensures we remain a growing and innovative business event destination. So 4 things I'm going to cover this morning for you. One is, how are we doing? What's the current situation in the marketplace? Secondly, what do we know? So, when we're thinking about international audiences and the view of our international audiences of Britain as a business events destination, what sort of things do we know about that? Thirdly, what are we doing about it? And fourthly, a look to the future. Obviously, we just referenced Brexit. That's obviously one big milestone going forward into the future. But what else is on kind of the priority list for government? But first of all, kind of like, who am I and why am I standing here in front of you? So I'm Robin Johnson. I'm currently Director Europe at Visit Britain. And part of my portfolio is our kind of international business events and what the government is trying to do to attract more of those events to the UK. Visit Britain is part of the British Tourism Authority, so it's quite a confusing remit which we have, but broadly speaking, we're the National Tourism Agency. So our job is to get more people to travel to the UK. And it's important to remember that actually the tourism industry is a vitally important part of the UK economy, and all of us sitting here are part of that tourism, of that visitor economy. Tourism represents about 10% of all employment in the UK, and it is worth 9% of GDP. So, it's a huge amount of what this country does, and business events plays a really, really important part of that. And this is why government is very committed to this sector. So, government a few years ago put out a policy paper, which I'm sure you've all read, which basically set out an ambition to make sure that government would address the lack of join-up across Britain's business events sector. Now, tourism is quite a fragmented industry. Even though it's worth £127 billion, it's a vastly fragmented industry covering everything from hospitality to events to retail. It's very, very large. And, there are around 200,000 SMEs which form part of the tourism industry. But what that also means, the tourism industry is very entrepreneurial. And, that is kind of a testament to some of the businesses we see here today. But our role as Visit Britain is to really look at the demand side. How do we really position Britain to be the most competitive possible destination on the international scene? And it is a very, very competitive industry. So let's look at see how that industry is performing at the moment. So if we look at business visits and spend over the last sort of 10, 15 years, what you'll notice is for the last decade or so, we've seen pretty strong growth, but that was after a massive fall after the financial crisis, which I'm sure that we all kind of remember. But 2016 basically saw us return back to where we were around the financial crisis. So 2016, a record year for business visits into this country, and broadly 1 in 4 of all visits we get internationally into the UK are for business visits, of which business events is a very important segment. However, if we look at this year so far, we've got data for the first 7 months of the year. We've seen that actually we've started to plateau a little bit. So in July, the latest month of data we had, we were 2% down versus the same month the year before. And in the first 7 months of this year, we're 3% down versus 2016. And that's in contrast to what you can see, for example, holiday visits, which have seen really strong growth this year on the back of the kind of weak sterling. It's a great time to come to the UK. It's never been cheaper for a lot of our international audiences. Some potential concerns on the business events side as we look at the figures into this year, which obviously is it's the first full year post the EU referendum last year, and the uncertainty that brings to business, starting potentially to filter through into the numbers this year. But as we look forward for the rest of the year, the numbers do look quite strong. We can't break that categorization down into kind of why people are traveling, but the forward bookings from the industry, the intelligence that we've got, suggests that the last quarter of the year will be quite strong, which is good news. But what do we know about these international audiences who are looking at the UK and thinking about whether to bring their international business here or not? And the research we've done looking at why people choose certain destinations to bring their international events, be that association congresses or corporate travel, it's very much practical reasons why they're choosing different destinations. So you can see here, I mean, ease of access, the suitability of venues, and value for money are the three most important factors which are highlighted by international clients when choosing a destination for business events. And how they decide these things is by looking broadly at their networks. You know, people's networks, be their colleagues, members, associates, agencies, or kind of their internal databases. These are all the, how the information they get on why they're choosing certain destinations, on why they should take their business event there. We've also done a bit of looking at the kind of international competition to look at, how are other countries positioning themselves internationally. And you can sort of see that, it's very crowded. If we look at our kind of top 10 competitors across the world, be that likes of Germany or Australia, France, Dubai, these are all the kind of strong international players who we are competing against to bring events to this country. There are some things which are essential, which everybody talks about, so that everybody's talking about transport, connectivity, their ability to organize effective events, venues and hotels, and the quality of what they have. That's kind of the hygienic stuff which everybody has to kind of prove themselves to get to the starting line. Then there are things around destination appeal, sectoral expertise. These are really defining characteristics which are kind of helping to drive decision making, but that is where a lot of our competitors are. Where we're trying to position ourselves is more on that more around kind of the organizer feedback and the testimonials. We know that peer-to-peer recommendations are one of the kind of most influential means as which people are getting information about why they choose to hold their international event in a particular country. And we can see not a lot of our competitors are in that space. So that's very much where, as the UK, we're trying to position ourselves, use the kind of high quality of the events we hold in this country and the satisfaction that our clients are getting from those events to then play that back around the strengths of why people should choose the UK. So I'm going to just show you a quick video, hopefully, if it works, around kind of how we're starting to try and bring that to life in terms of some of our creative. If we get sound. You can see it's pretty, though.
It has a long history of research and education.
Being in the same places where great minds.
Broadly speaking, what's happening in the video is that different people are kind of explaining why it is they brought their event to the UK, what the kind of qualities were which kind of helped them to choose the UK as their destination. So, again, kind of very much using people who've held events in this country to talk about why it was such a success and why they would bring it back again. You can find it on our website if you want to watch the actual sound. So what do we do about kind of helping to bring value to Britain's events sector? And particularly I think here around kind of the business events, international business events sector, which is what we're particularly focused on in trying to add value. So we run something called the Event Support Program, where we help different destinations and venues to access either financial or non-financial support. So this has helped the likes of Manchester to win the Euroscience Open Forum, Newcastle to grow BIM Show Live into a kind of bigger international event by bringing more international delegates, or help Bristol to bring the VR World Congress to the UK as well. So again, it's trying to find ways about how we can provide financial support to help destinations and venues win more international bids, or to help to grow into domestic events into more of an international affair, hence helping to kind of improve the kind of economic impact of those events. Again, it's providing routes to market for suppliers in this country to meet with more international buyers. So obviously the big international trade shows, but increasingly more bespoke events to meet specific target international buyers who we know are going to kind of bring value to the UK, and increasingly in growth markets. So in January, we're going out for the first time to China with a kind of big delegation to kind of start making those links with the Chinese audience as well. And then next year, we're holding our kind of first major standalone international MySpire event in the UK, something called Meet GB, which will be here in London. So for anyone who's a qualified international buyer who's looking, who wants to kind of meet with, or international planner who wants to meet with international buyers, this is the kind of platform which will help you to meet those international audiences. Broadly speaking, what we're trying to do is to kind of create that demand out there, build the brand about why choose Britain for business events, and then providing the platforms to help, suppliers meet those international buyers who are looking to take their events to somewhere special. Policy. Now, Brexit, I did say I was going to mention this. it is one of the big things on the horizon. We are very, very aware at the kind of impact that this can have, the uncertainty around what will happen post March 2019 in terms of attracting new business to the UK. And so these are some of the key areas which we're looking to work with government around getting clarity as soon as possible. Obviously, the most important one is air service agreements. We are an island. If people can't fly here, that's quite a big problem for attracting international visitors, particularly those who want to come to international business events. Again, visa-free travel. I mean, 70% of our international visitors come from Europe. So their ability to come here easily and without hassle is vitally important if we're going to continue to grow visits from European markets. But also European customers are some of our most important customers for international events we're holding in this country. Hospitality and workforce is a really another key thing which sometimes gets overlooked. A large percentage of our workforce who work in the hospitality industry and also in the events industry in terms of servicing a lot of the international events we hold in this country are usually EU workers. And so how can we make sure we keep that key part of the workforce looking forward into the future, but also help to grow more of a domestic workforce as well, and make sure we've got the right balance of British workers coming into the industry, but also the right kind of international talent also working in industry as well. But also this Brexit provides us with the opportunity as well to revisit regulation, which we have here in the UK, and to see what we could do to streamline things, cut red tape, and make things easier for businesses to kind of grow in future. So there's a huge amount of work we're doing behind the scenes, working with government to try and get this clarity as soon as we possibly can, because we know how important it is for the industry. And one of the other really important things which we're looking at is beyond Brexit and looking towards the industry of the future. Now, some of you may have picked up in the news, some of you may have not. There's this thing called the industrial strategy, which the government is looking at working on, which is really looking at how they can look at key sectors which are going to help to drive the UK economy forward into the future. And they've asked different sectors across the UK to look at what could the government do to kind of help that industry really grow into a powerhouse for the future. And the tourism industry is one of those who've come together to try and do that. So, we currently have, working with the industry, put out a proposed tourism sector deal to government, which is currently under negotiation. And this is really looking to how we can work, the private sector can work with government to kind of make sure that tourism is better set up in future to succeed. So this is the kind of areas which we've been looking at through the tourism sector deal with the private sector in the tourism. So firstly, it's looking at connectivity, so looking at how we can address issues around kind of visas and route development, making sure we've continuously got enough flight capacity coming into the UK, but particularly things around visas, particularly around kind of business events, and making sure you've got a streamlined service from the Home Office for any events that you're holding in the UK, that it's easy for your customers to come to the UK. Skills, we've referenced this already with regards to Brexit, but it is a really important long-term issue we need to crack. This was a consistent piece of feedback from the industry, no matter what part of the industry we talk to. Changing perceptions about people wanting to work within the tourism industry, and people seeing it as more of a kind of long-term career move, and making sure we've got that pipeline of talent coming into the sector, and that we're nurturing the talent which exists within it as well. A whole sense of place, trying to work out how we can continue to grow different parts of the country with regards to the tourism economy. Tourism is quite unique in the fact that you will find it in every single part of the country, no matter where you are. And so continuing to try and build that expertise at a local level to try and help to build tourism throughout the country. Because ultimately, it is down to regional growth and jobs throughout the country. And finally, around productivity, and this is where the business events sector can play such a huge role. Looking at how we do have a problem with productivity in this country currently, and within the tourism industry, business events, by virtue of the fact that it's held throughout the year, can really help in terms of growing and where there's spare capacity when holiday visits might not be at a premium. So these are the sorts of things which we're working with the industry on to try and look at a kind of brighter future for the industry. But regardless, we all have a role to play in terms of growing the business events sector in future, and so and that's obviously part of my role. But all of you as well can play a role in terms of working with your clients to make sure that they're thinking of Britain as the place to hold international events and making sure we're all more successful in the future. Thank you.